Everybody from Las Vegas, and that's the Las Vegas Strip you're looking at. A distant view, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Andy Isco, Jim Feist here in Las Vegas. And Andy, the stage. Yeah, the stage. There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
The NHL is over. Was Florida won? Florida teams won what, 6 of the last 8 or something like that? It's kind of crazy.
You mean games? Games or?
I mean, these championships. I mean,
Well, they've won 2 in a row. They had played for 3, and Tampa Bay, the other Florida team, had been dominant for a number of years before that. Edmonton's a nice story, but they just they didn't have the goaltending. Florida's a really good defensive team. They made it very difficult. I mean, the score is somewhat deceptive, really, for both sides. But Florida was clearly the better team. I think Edmonton may have outshot them. They were leading for most of the game, but it's not how many shots you take. It's how good are the shots and how many of them go into the net. And Florida clearly had the better goaltending and the experience, and the addition of Marchand at the trade deadline made a big difference. And Kachuk, they talked about his acquisition back in 2022, really gave I guess needed experience to the Florida team, to the Panthers. And as a result, and in fact, I forget which player, it was one of them last night who said, we've got a little dynasty. And I guess 2 in a row these days counts as a dynasty in professional sports. Because, well, keep in mind that you have to win 4 series of that you had to win 16 games to win a championship. That's tough to do even once, much less twice in a row. So there is something to be said about that. The word dynasty is often used. I mean, I guess really when you take a look at it, the New England Patriots have to be considered a dynasty simply because it extended basically 20 years. Okay. Now, Kansas City has sort of a mini dynasty, but even them, they haven't had 3 in a row. They were going for 3 in a row this year. The Chiefs were. So dynasty is sort of like I guess the best example of a true dynasty. And of course, it was hundreds of years ago, the Boston Celtics, when they won, 8 or 9 straight NBA championships. Now, it was like an 8 or 9 team league back then. But even so, for one team to be as dominant as they were year after year after year, that really has to be sort of a dynasty. When the Yankees were winning, 9 championships in 10 years or something along those lines. So the definition of dynasty has changed, and understandably so, because it's tougher these days with A, number more teams you're competing against, and B, number of games that you have to win in the postseason to be crowned the champion. Regardless, even in the NFL, you used to have, you go back to the 1960s. Well, pre-merger, you had to win one game, basically, end of the year to be champion. The champion East met the champion of the West, and that was the winner. So it's dynasty has taken on a different definition. I think what the one we have that we use now is really a little bit more realistic, because it does consider the fact that it's much, much more difficult when you're playing several series against 32 to 31 opponents or possible opponents, as opposed to when you had a much smaller league, both in football, baseball, and hockey. Or basketball.
I guess when you go back to college basketball, you'd have to go back to John Wooden and UCLA.
Yeah, that'd be similar to Celtics. Yeah. And it was right around the same time. The Celtics dynasty started a little bit later a little earlier rather, in the 1950s, and the UCLA started really in the mid 60s when. I don't remember if Kareem was on the start first of that team, because I think UCLA may have won a couple of championships before he got there, but he certainly cemented the legacy of John Wooden and UCLA.
Well, we got a potential dynasty. They talk about it. I doubt that'll happen because a lot of changes. Oklahoma City Thunder is 1 game away from clinching themselves a title. They go to Indiana tomorrow. They're going to play the Pacers. Pacers will or will not be with a full or partial Halliburton.
Mm-hmm.
I have my own opinions about Halliburton. I think he's a very good player. I don't think he's a great player. I think he's very inconsistent. He sort of pictures himself as a playmaker, setting up others, but the team needs him to score. He can't go You can't play a whole game and disappear sometimes, and he does disappear at times.
Yeah, the thing with Halliburton, though, and to his credit, he is a bit of a team player by looking to set others up. He's got some really good talent around him that Indiana has shown that they can win when he has an off night. And for him, an off night might be 15, 18 points because there is such talent around him. And then really, when you look at the structure of both of the structure of both of these rosters, they are both positioned to be, competing for conference championships for the next several years, barring wholesale changes or significant changes in personnel.
Well, the league will make changes because there's going to be players moving from team to team. There's going to be draft choices, things like coaching changes. It's showing up that what the Knicks did, firing Thibodeau, was one of the most foolish things they can do because, nobody wants to basically. Other than money, which will attract someone to come there but James Dolan is the equivalent of Jerry Jones in the NFL, with a lot of assets, a lot of money, a great market, and yet 25 to 27 years they haven't been able to produce shit.
Yeah, and by the way, the thing with the Knicks is it's not only the fact that they can't. They haven't found anybody to take the job. The people they want to talk to, and this is part of the planning that should have gone into before making the decision to fire Thibodeau. A lot of the teams, like with Jason Kidd and the others, and Billy Donovan with the Bulls, the teams don't want to lose those coaches, so they're not even allowing the Knicks to talk to them. So the Knicks should have realized that the good coaches who they might like aren't going to be available because the other teams recognize what a good coach is and they want to keep him.
That is true. However, players and coaches do opt out of contracts. And if Jason Kidd really wants to go to New York, he would find a way to go to New York. So even though the team may say you can't talk to him, if that's the case, believe me, if he wants to go there, he will find a way with his attorneys and breaking contracts and renegotiating. They find a way because every contract is unfortunately, every contract is renegotiable. You sign a contract for lots of money, and then the next year you want more money. Why the hell did you sign the contract in the first place? Yeah. But the contracts mean nothing.
Even and as you point out, even the opt-outs can always be negotiated. In other words, Jason Kidd may not have an opt-out clause in his contract, so he will either use the Knicks job, for example, as a way to get out because they can't meet his demands, and they'll get compensation for it from the Knicks, or they will renegotiate his contract and he'll stay where he is for more money.
As far as the two teams that we have left, we're heading to Game 6. I've had in Game 5, I took 6 and 6.5, lost by 7.
Me too.
Financial disaster. And then the other night I took 10, lost by 11. That was another blow. So it's been 2 bad beats in a row, or just. It is what it is. It happens all the time. It runs in cycles. You can go to a crap table and throw 7 all night, or you can, throw craps all night.
Throw craps back to back.
Yeah. It is what it is. Now, when you talk about TJ McConnell looking much better than Halliburton, moves the team better, more energy, attacks the paint. He's also coming in a situation where he's a sub with, and the defenses are not focused on him. They're focused on Halliburton. So now if he actually gets starting, and he's been in the league, he's an experienced guy. And if they now focus on him as on the defense, because it's going to be tougher for him to do what he normally does, because the OKC is going to have a different focus on how to defend him. So be that as it may, you'll look for a drop-off a little bit from him. You're not going to see what he's been able to do under normal circumstances. And then Nimhard is the other guy that they might have to use at point. The one thing about Indiana, they're good. And OKC is good at home, but they're not as good on the road. They were very blessed to win and cover in Game 4 on the road, as were Indiana to win and cover in
Game 1.
Yeah. But it's a blue collar state. It's Hoosier state. It's Hoosier basketball. They're going to come to play. I mean, I got to tell you this. I took initially when it came out. This is everybody can listen to. This is what I'm doing. I took the 6, and then I saw 6.5. I took 6.5, and this morning I saw 7.5. Now I went in right away to get it, and it was gone. So I ended up taking 7. So now I got 6, 6.5, and 7. I didn't intend to make 3 bets on this game, but the line keeps going up, and I have to stop now. I gotta, at some point. Well, if it goes to 7.5 or 8, I guess I'll have to buy some back because I'm now overloaded on a team that might not have their point guard.
As we're doing this on Wednesday morning, so the game isn't until Thursday evening. So there's still somewhere around 32, 34 hours, something like that before game time. So we may, maybe they were just testing the waters a little bit when that line went up to 7.5, and immediately came back. Yeah, what's the resistance point?
7.5, I couldn't get it.
Yeah, what's the resistance point? And obviously somebody came back and took it. But a lot of the money is still yet to be bet on this game, much like with the Super Bowl. The money doesn't come in until Saturday on the Sunday. So, but even in the NBA, the money normally doesn't come in until the day of the game. So right now it's still early morning Wednesday. Let's see what happens on Thursday, and let's see what happens, because I think that there may be some people who, like you, saw the 7.5, and when the public gets in and bets Oklahoma City tomorrow, that 7.5 will return, and then it's a question of how long will people wait before seeing if maybe it gets to 8, or maybe once it shows up at 7.5, you'll buy it to 8.
Exactly, especially if you're overloaded on the favorite, and you have to buy it 8 to get your balance back on your sheet. So I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's a good series. It's 2 small markets. I know the TV ratings are probably hurting because of the 2 small markets, but to me, it's better basketball than saying, okay, you're gonna. I like the fact that we got 2 small markets, and they're pretty damn good teams.
By the way, another thing about small markets and why it may not be as huge a concern and we were talking before we started recording about this and the way things have changed and ratings are measured. The fact that there is now nationwide legal gambling, I think, helps increase the ratings, because more and more people are getting into the betting market. And when you have an opportunity to watch your bet in action, you're going to do that. And especially with the opportunity for in-game wagering, people won't just sit there and watch the first half and turn it off. They'll be looking for wagering opportunities throughout the 3rd and 4th quarter as well. So ratings may actually be a little bit better. The question that I had and we talked about is, how do you accurately measure those ratings? It's probably a lot easier. What you have, you used to have the old boxes on the TV set or something. Well, now you don't need all that with the internet and everything. So maybe the ratings may be a little bit better, because we're only into about the 5th or 6th year of legalized wagering, and I think that takes a little bit of time to get adjusted in the measurement of those ratings.
Speaking about that, I mean, with the states and FanDuel coming out with this sort of a surcharge, or maybe you can use, I hate to use the word because it's political, the tariffs on top of the bets. I'm not sure how deep that's going to go, how many more people are going to do that, and how much that will drive the bettors to offshores and local corner bookmakers, because it really affects the under $10 bettors a lot. It really takes a huge percentage of their bankroll. I mean, if you're going to make $10 bets, which is $100, and then you have to pay 50 cents.
That's $5.
Those bets. That's $5.
That's 50% of your. You don't even win anything. Now you're laying a huge price, because basically that 50 cents is an additional amount that you're laying per wager. Now, if you're betting $10,000, you're paying the same 50 cents on the bet. That means nothing. Yeah, if you're betting $100, 50 cents means nothing. But if you're betting $10, $20 or whatever, that adds up if you're making multiple bets.
How about the poor guy that bets $1 or $2 or $5?
Yeah, on an 18 parlay or whatever they do for the dollar, or whatever it is that they try to do. It's still very, very costly, and it's just greed. The states know they can get away. Well, right now it's just Illinois, I believe.
Well, it's FanDuel. FanDuel popped in with their own rules. They're
No, but I'm
50.
saying Illinois imposed the tax that FanDuel has to pay.
No,
Right?
Illinois. Well, true. Illinois is 25 cents for the first, I think, 20,000 bets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then 50 cents for every bet above that. If FanDuel came out and said, we're going to charge 50 cents on every bet.
Yeah.
So then FanDuel is all over the country. So that's more growth to this. And what happens next? I don't know what happens next.
Is that what FanDuel is, or because the 25 cents on the first 20,000 and the 50 cents on anything above that just goes to the state of Illinois, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So
But then
if FanDuel
is in multiple states.
Yeah, but FanDuel does. But it's the people in Illinois who should be upset. If I'm FanDuel, I don't make it nationwide. I only do it for people who are registered in Illinois, because that's the only place I have to pay the tax. If I'm FanDuel, is to the state of Illinois. Why should I burden the people in Idaho or South Carolina or whatever it is?
From what I understand, that's what they did.
Well,
they put it on everything. I mean, I may be misinformed because I haven't studied it, but anyway, that's a
well, I'll tell you what, if it's only FanDuel, then DraftKings has to be pretty happy about it, because that's their main competition. Competition will ultimately drive things down.
Well, you got to bet MGM. You got these other sites.
Yeah, well, MGM, yeah.
If it's greed motivating, and if they think these other guys are getting away with it, they're going to do it too. As far as the game is concerned, I would have to say that this is going to be a competitive game. I don't think Indiana is going to roll up their tent and go home. Yeah, they're disappointed, but they're a deep team. They play well at home, and Oklahoma
look what they did on the road the other night. They're down the whole game, and all of a sudden, fourth quarter, it's 2 points. And then OKC runs out. So, that was on the road. So there's nothing to suggest that Indiana can't do it. And as we've talked along throughout the series, Indiana continues to be undervalued. And you saw it. I mean, now they happen to be relatively properly priced the way the games ended with the 10-point, nearly the 10-point win and the +6 losing by 7. So those basically say those lines were relatively okay. But the way that the games have been played, these teams are very evenly matched.
Except for, what is SGA?
Yeah, Gilgeous-Alexander.
He's far superior to Halliburton in every way.
He's best player on the court.
Yeah, he is. Halliburton doesn't shine his shoes. I'm sorry. I mean, I like Halliburton as a player, as a talent. He seems like a really nice guy. He plays hard. He's a teammate. But I don't think he's an A quality point guard. He's just not. He doesn't seem to have the killer instinct that's necessary to take you over the top. Now, be that as it may, there aren't many that have that killer instinct and all the talent that goes with it. So he is, in this world, very valuable. But SGA is just. Does the guy ever miss? I mean, my God. I mean, when he's inside the 3-point line, he's like 90%.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
He's a very, very well-rounded player.
Unbelievable. The great team, well coached, great record this year, 68 regular season wins. They are the better team in my mind, but I think when you look at it, they've been overpriced. Now they did cover the last two, but arguably
barely.
Arguably, they should have maybe gone 1-1, but maybe even 0-2. But I look for a big game by Indiana from a lot of passion. They're not going to quit. They are from the Hoosier State, and that is the home of. That's the home of Hoosiers. Remember that movie? Which
Gene Hackman is watching from above.
Yes, that's right.
The thought I have, though, and it was a concern because in Game 5 at OKC, and maybe it's different because it's going to be played in Indiana, is we mentioned that Indiana came all the way back to make it a 2-point game, and then OKC was able to win the final few minutes, much as they did the game before when they had a nice run at the end to get the win. and I think they barely got the cover, but they were ahead, I think, by 8 to 12 points most of the way in that game. Being at home in Indiana, I'm wondering, how that's going to affect the end game here, because they are going. This is the first time in the series that we have an elimination game. Quite obviously, 2-2. The loser of the next game is down 2-3 and faces elimination. OKC can still quote unquote afford a loss because they'll get the home court if there's a game 7. I'm just wondering if Indiana is going to be able to do something different, because remember, they had an opportunity in game 4 to take a 3-1 lead playing at home, and they were unable to do that because OKC rose up and played, again, great at the end of the game that they ended up barely covering, the one that they were leading, I think, most of the way by 8 to 12 points, and they ended up winning by, I think, 11 or something along those lines. So I'm just wondering about that, because I could see this being a competitive game throughout, and I could see Indiana being in the same situation late. OKC knows they can close out these late games. Remember, Indiana, when they won that first game, they led for 0.3 of a second when they hit that late shot. And that was the only 0.3 of a second that they led in the entire game. So basically, they got a game that I don't know that they shouldn't have. But then again, you'd say Oklahoma City let them back in the game there because they got cold at the end. So I'm just concerned about what happened. Now, if you start getting the +7 and the +8, that's a lot different because, look, the other game, we thought the +6 was going to be fine because it was a tie game with just a few minutes to go before Oklahoma City ended up extending and making their free throws at the end, etc., that Indiana could not. So, I'm going to be looking at this game, and we can talk about it after you do the counterpoint on this. I'm going to be looking at the total in the game.
Well, the first we played 5. Most of the games appeared to be underplays. One game went over 228 and got to 230. The other night was actually the highest over versus the line, and that one, was pretty good. So we haven't seen a lot of over potential here, even though the betting market started.
Well, we have, because I think I sent you these numbers, and it's dramatic, both in the contrast between first half and second half scoring, and also a dramatic contrast as to where that great difference occurred. The 3 games in Oklahoma City, 102 in the first half, 119 in the second half. Game 2, 100 points in the first half, 130 in the second half. Game 5, 104 in the first half, 125 in the second half. Considerably higher scoring in the second half in OKC for the two teams, plus 16, plus 30, plus 21. Now you go to the 2 games in Indiana, it was the exact reverse. In game 3 at Indiana, they scored 124 in the first half, 99 in the second half. In game 4, 117 in the first half, 98 in the second half. So whereas the second half has been much higher scoring in the games in OKC, in the 2 games in Indiana, and remember the series moved to Indiana, tied 1-1, not 0-2 for the Hoosiers, for the Pacers being down. But it's plus 25 and plus 19 higher scoring first half in Indiana. So my initial thought was, it's game 6, it's an elimination game. Maybe the game stays under as Indiana becomes a little bit more deliberate in the game. But based upon what we saw in games 3 when the series was tied 1-1, and in game 4 when Indiana was up 2-1, those teams went at it in the first half, and they put up 124 and 117 points, and then things cooled down when you would have thought that maybe the pattern that was established in Oklahoma City, low-scoring first half, high-scoring second half, would continue. And not only did it not continue in game 3, it didn't continue in game 4. So now you look at game 5 and say, well, wait a minute. They were scoring heavily in the first 2 games of the series. Then they went to more they were not scoring heavily in the first half in the 2 Oklahoma City games. Then they went wild in games 3 and 4 after all the adjustments and counter strategies had been made. So maybe this is turning into a series where now all the scoring or more of the scoring is going to be done in the first half. And then we get game 5 where it said, okay, we're back in Oklahoma City, and the game took the same pattern, despite the fact that the first 4 games had already been played, 2 of which were all 4 of which had presented dramatically different scoring patterns in first half, second half, and they happen to be related to the site.
How do you feel that changes if Halliburton doesn't play?
Well, I would think that overall you would expect a lower scoring game simply because of his absence. And of course, he's been a contributor. But again, even when he wasn't scoring, he was facilitating somewhat. But if he's not able to play or not able to play even 70%, you'd have to think it's going to be missed. But then again, one of the things that Indiana's been able to demonstrate with some of the other guys, especially a guy like Neesmith, that they've got some really good scoring options that they can compensate for him. As they've been able to.
Neesmith, Toppin, Nemhard, Siakam. You got a lot of balance on that team. It's a very difficult team to stop. However, as far as defense in this league, nobody plays defense better than OKC, and that's where they have like gears, 1, 2, and 3 gear. If they hit to that third gear, they're all over you. They're pressing, they're trapping.
We saw that especially against Minnesota. They made Minnesota look like a college team.
Oh my God, yeah, that was unbelievable. Their defense is over the top good, and that's what that's one of the things that makes them special. SGA, of course, also, and I look for a good game. I don't know I'm not too sure about the total because I don't know the lineup. It will make a difference if TJ plays point or Halliburton plays point. Then you don't have that guy coming in off the bench to stimulate. So that's if it's TJ starting it.
The early movement in this game went down. It opened 224.5. We're now seeing 222, 222.5. And that kind of makes sense when you're talking about an elimination game figured to be played more deliberately, but that's not necessarily the case. So right now, if you do like the over in the game, or certainly even in the first half, I think the total is like 113. So it is in line with the scoring that we've seen in the 2 Indianapolis games with the 113 in the first half.
A couple of things well, first of all, congratulations to Florida for winning the hockey, win the Stanley. In baseball, how shocked were you when Boston traded Devers?
I was shocked because of when it happened. Had they traded him a month ago when we started hearing about all the dissatisfaction, I could have understood it. He's a cancer in the clubhouse, blah, 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 blah. But now the Red Sox have been playing well and they're winning. Look what they just did to the Yankees. Look what they've been doing before that. They've been one of the better teams in the league over the last 2 to 3 weeks. And so things were falling into place. And I was very surprised. They say they're not punting on the season, but when you get rid of your best player, despite the fact that he's not enthused about playing where they're asking him to play, he's still producing. I was a bit surprised, but maybe it'll be something that works out for both teams because I'll tell you what have the Yankees scored now? They scored like 7 runs in the last 6 or 7 games. That's unbelievable what we're seeing out of the Yankees right now. It's almost like you have to think that the Yankees are afraid to score, that maybe some of the players on the team are afraid they're going to run to an ice agent at home plate.
But you go back to Boston and their trades. I mean, this is the same guy. This is the same team got rid of Betts a couple of years ago. And you
never understood that.
You go back a century, they got rid of Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
So they have a history, and who knows what the hell motivates him. But if he's a cancer in the club.
By the way, I wonder if the trade of Betts means it's going to be similar to the trade of or the allowing him to go to I forget if it was a trade or a free agent or whatever it was, but nonetheless, because it was about 100 years after Babe Ruth. So I wonder if now trading away Mookie Betts or getting rid of Mookie Betts means that they're going to go another 80, whatever it is, without a World Series again after winning 4 in the 2000s.
We have a pitcher in baseball that's doing some magical stuff. My pitcher's for Detroit. I think he's going today, isn't he? Yeah, he is.
Cool, yeah.
Cool. And his numbers are just astronomical. I know you know them. You're a numbers guy, but he is doing Sandy Koufax kind of thing.
There have been a few pitchers. I'll tell you one of the kids who went last night, he didn't have a great game, but Abbott of Cincinnati has been doing in the National League what Skubal has been doing in the American League too, in many other similar categories. They're striking out guys, especially Skubal's been doing that, and he's just putting up some good numbers. And of course, I think he was a unanimous Cy Young Award winner last year, and he's following that up. And Detroit's been playing extremely well. I don't know if they still do. I think they still have the best record in the American League. Maybe not quite overall, because I think, well, the Mets have cooled a little bit recently, but the Cubs have been playing solid baseball. So right now, Cubs and Detroit seem to be the teams that have been playing the best. And the Dodgers, every time it seems as though they're going to break out of things, they end up losing 2 out of 3. So I don't know about this team, but again, we are now about 60% into the season. Well, actually, we're about the 40% of the season. Or actually, we are about 10 days away from reaching the 81 game mark, which is half the season. So there's a lot to go on right now. And yeah, there's still a lot of baseball to be played. But with every game that's played, the season's getting shorter. And the Dodgers do not look like right now the team that was projected to win 103 games.
They've had enormous problems with the pitching staff.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't keep anybody healthy.
I believe they have had something like 13 or 14 different pitchers start games. Now, a lot of them have been bullpen games where the guy has gone maybe an inning in 2/3 or something. But still, the number of pitchers who have made, I think there are only maybe 2 pitchers on the staff that have made more than 10. Most pitchers who have not missed a start have pitched 14 or 15 starts.
Wow.
Yeah.
We got an all-star break coming up, and that usually changes a lot because the momentum's everything pro or con momentum stops, and you have to restart after the break.
And we start getting a lot of the trades with the end of July trading deadline, and a lot of that starts getting done right at or immediately after the trade deadline. So it was an interesting trade because there were a couple of decent young pitchers involved in that Boston-San Francisco trade as well, all of whom were pretty much developing, but obviously Devers the key part of it.
Right. We also have a little game that starts up in a couple of months. I think it's actually college football starts in about 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And about a week later or 2 weeks later, we got the pros. There's a lot of thoughts starting to come out about who's this and who's that, and coaching issues, and et cetera, et cetera.
By the way, I will let our audience know, for those who do follow football, that the major mass market publications have hit the newsstands. Lindy's college magazine and pro magazines are out. Athlon, the other main competitor for the mainstream. We're not talking about Mark Lawrence's Playbook and the Phil Steele book, who are more, Mark's book especially is geared towards the betting audience with the information that it contains, which is tremendous. It'll be available, I think Mark said, around the 10th of July, as it's at the printers. But for those people who are looking to get a head start, those major magazines, and I'll mention there are 2 new teams in college football who are in the now have gone up from FCS to SBS. That's Missouri State and the University of Delaware. So those will be on the big board this year. But although, keep in mind, those FCS teams now, most sports books put lines on those, Morgan State against Jackson State. Those games are now bettable as well. So one of my areas of advice to people who are looking to get started or looking to really manage the workload, specialize. And if you can specialize in some of those smaller conferences, now maybe the limits are less, okay?
Amen.
But the winning is still possible. So if you want to concentrate on all those, the 8 or 9 FCS conferences, the Missouri Valley, the Big Sky, whatever, there's money to be made on those. And even in the FBS level, okay, yeah, you can concentrate on the Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC, the others, the SEC, of course. But there's 4 or 5 other conferences like the Sun Belt, the MAC, the Mountain West, and those do have limits quite, I don't know how close they are, because you don't get that as much action as you do, say, in Big 10 or SEC games, but you can still make some nice coin by focusing and keeping up with the local newspapers in those areas and following those teams. Just because Michigan and Ohio State are playing, yeah, it might be a nice game to watch, but there's so much information out there. The line's probably pretty good. Might not be the same with a game between Alcorn State and Prairie View.
That's an excellent point, because the odds makers can't spend all their time focusing on those minor teams,
right,
where that creates a value for the bettor if he does focus on those minor teams. So it's a way to get around things and to make a little bit of money. Yes, you're going to be limited in how much action, but not that many people bet action that's that high that the bookmakers will refuse it. So if you're a $500 bettor, chances are you'll be able to get down every dollar you want. And it's a good way to pick up some coin. I advise it personally. I'm gravitating more to that in all sports, college basketball specifically, which is I really love. But staying on top of those small conferences is valuable.
Yeah. Remember, it's a lot different than it was 40 years ago, where you had maybe 250 college basketball teams. Now you've got 350 college basketball teams. You had 28 or 26 NFL teams. You've now got 32. NBA has expanded over the years. NHL has expanded. Not only that, the seasons overlap more than they ever did. Back in the 1990s, college basketball did not begin until after Thanksgiving. Now you've got games the first week of November involving more teams. There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so much time that you can devote to any one sport. And obviously, the more time you spend on 5 games, you're probably going to get a better feel for it, because part of the time that you wouldn't be spending on those 5 games, you'd be spending on 10 games, meaning you'd be spending half the time that you really should be spending. So it's time management as well as money management is part of, helping your bankroll.
Not to divert here, people notice that I'm a little choked up. I have Kleenex, sneezing. Allergy season in Las Vegas is a bitch. We live in a very dry climate with a lot of wind, and what that means is that stuff that's out there is blown in the air. And man, I'll tell you, some of us suffer from it. And this,
but you see, with those allergies, they've got medications. I'm allergic to losing, but there's no pill I can take.
there's one cure for that. Don't bet.
Yeah, don't bet.
Yeah. I'm allergic to too, especially those last 2 1-point losses.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it's interesting. It's all great. There's money to be made. Baseball is still got a long way to go, and I'm happy that we're 40% into the season now. We know everything that we need to know from the teams at this point. There's going to be some teams that are going to emerge or decline after the All-Star break. Something always happens along the way, and the trade deadline will make a difference as well. Devers going to San Francisco, that gives them a better chance of catching the Dodgers, especially if the Dodgers can't keep their pitchers healthy.
Yeah.
There's a possibility there. I mean, I know the Dodgers were like, everybody was betting they were going to win 162 games, but nobody counted on having 13 or 14 guys on the IL from their pitching staff. So a lot of things do change.
By the way, it wasn't a great pitching staff coming into the season. There was no dominant starter. I'm not going to say Clayton Kershaw. He's obviously towards the end of his career, and he started off terribly. He has pitched well his last 3 or 4 starts, and again, he's a veteran. He's a smart pitcher. Maybe that's a little bit of a sign, but really coming into the season, I don't know that you could say there was a true ace on that staff.
Well, I think so. I think with Snell.
Okay. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. He was expected to be the guy. We don't know when he's coming back. I think he's getting close. Yamamoto has pitched well.
Yeah, they got aces. They're just not on the field.
Yeah.
So, that might all change. You get after the All-Star break with more rest, more time. I have to excuse myself again with this sneezing.
Yeah,
brutal.
That was the curious thing, as I mentioned, about the Devers trade occurring so early as it did, because Boston is very much in contention, and with the Yankees, who had built up a nice, somewhat comfortable lead. Well, it's not that comfortable anymore with their recent losing streak. And like I say, I mean, they've been now, 3 or 4 straight shutouts that they've had. And
pretty
they
amazing.
Score, with that lineup, they used. I think Sonny Reisner used to put up a prop bet. Will there be a no-hitter pitched when he was over at the Castaways, and then at some of the other places? I think it was at the Rio, and I think ultimately the Desert Inn. And I'd like to see some more of those props up there. But something like, will there be a 1-0 game today? There have been. I did a study about a week ago, and we are well ahead of the pace from the last few years as far as the number of 1-0 games that have been played. I think something like 24 or 26 games already. We're not even halfway through the season. I think last year there was something like 46 or 48 for the entire season.
How
So
about
scoring is
wait a minute?
down.
We had a one-hitter. We had a no-hitter the other day with Arkansas.
In college, yeah.
in college baseball.
That was almost a perfect game. The thing that ruined it, he hit 2 batters.
Wow.
One in the 8th and one in the 9th. And one in the 9th, they actually I didn't realize this. They count that hit by pitch as a strikeout when it's overturned. Arkansas challenged the hit by pitch, and the umpires took a look and they said, "Yeah, he didn't try to get out of the way and all that," and that apparently went down as a strikeout. But he still had, I think like 18 or 19 strikeouts overall, including.
Wow. What was the young man's name? I don't remember what that was.
I think it's Gage Wood, WOD. Made me think of Kerry Wood with all those strikeouts.
Right. Back in the day.
I think he had 17 or 18. It may have been, I don't know if it was his first start, but his rookie season, he had that great total, and of course went on to unfortunately, an injury-plagued career. But he was a sensation to watch in his first few years with the Cubs. But Arkansas. Then they beat LSU. They beat UCLA last night in their half of the bracket. They now have to face LSU, who beat them in the first game of the bracket, and they would have to beat them twice. LSU is undefeated, so it'll be Arkansas against LSU. If LSU wins this game, I think it's today, they end up advancing to the finals. If Arkansas beats LSU, they play, I think, tomorrow, and the winner of that game plays in the championship game. But I think the kid Wood, I wasn't sure. They didn't need him last night against UCLA, which was an elimination game for both teams. They didn't need him because Arkansas was ahead from the very start of that game. But I'm wondering tonight in that game against LSU, where their season could end with a loss, if Wood isn't available for maybe 2 innings of late relief if Arkansas is either not ahead by 5 or down by 5.
But if they do win, they might need him tomorrow.
The next game, yes, exactly. That's why I think they would. It's the old thing, don't save them for tomorrow. There may not be a tomorrow.
Before we sign off, Andy, any free plays you want to give the folks out there in any sport? Doesn't matter what sport.
I'm gonna go with my my thought for the game tomorrow with OKC, and I'm gonna look for the high-scoring first half that we saw in the first 2 games. We saw 117 and 124. I think Indiana is going to come out being very, very aggressive. Obviously, I think what we'll see also is we'll see an adjustment in the line. Maybe not so much of Halliburton plays, because I think he's expected to play. Carlisle says he's expecting to play. But if it comes out that he's listed as questionable or downgraded to out before game time, we might see this total drop a couple of points, both for the half and for the full game. So I will still look over in the first half, and I'll also look over for the game, because I think the second half is going to be a high score, notwithstanding the first 2 games in Indiana being low scoring. I think that whoever is behind, especially if it's Indiana, is going to have to force a fast pace in the second half if we get to a double-digit deficit, say middle third quarter.
Question for you, since you have the stats in front of you. In Indiana, which team has been the higher scored team in the first half?
Unfortunately, I don't have that breakdown. But if you talk for about a minute, I can get it.
Okay. Well, my point is this. I'm looking for a major effort from the team that's desperate. Now, granted, there's nothing, you can't take anything away from OKC. They are the best team in basketball, even though I bet against them frequently. It's only because I think line value is dictating that the lines are overinflated. However, I've been wrong the last 2 games because I lost both by a point. But in this game, I'm thinking that Indiana, with all the pressure on them, this is it. Why hold back? Go for it. I'm thinking Indiana first half is a good bet. Now, I do want to hear the stats.
By the way, I'm going to give it to you right now. The first half of the first Indiana game, Game 3, Indiana was up 64-60. In Game 4 at Indiana, they were up 60-57. So they led by 4 and they led by 3.
Not by much. Okay, so it's pretty even in those cases. Okay, so they're not born. A bet on that would not be borne out by the stats. but they're now a 6 to 8 point dog in the game. I would still say Indiana first half is still a good bet. I don't know what the number is.
Well, I'm gonna check that right now, and if my computer will cooperate. Okay, yeah. Well, if my cursor would cooperate, and right now Oklahoma City is a solid 3-point favorite. I think one place here in Vegas has the Golden Nugget, which is a rogue book in many instances, is the 3.5. But basically, we're seeing OKC -3 for the first half, and that might based upon what we saw in the first 2 games at Indiana, where they led in the first half and were still underdogs for the first half. Maybe Indiana first half is the play I'm going to go with.
That's what I'm going to do too.
And probably partially points, partially money line.
I'm also going to give you a prop bet on Siakam over 20 points, over 20.5. He is an absolute awesome player, and they're going to have to feature him and Nemrod and Toppin and all these guys. They're going to have to make up for the lack of production from Halliburton, which that's the inconsistency about Halliburton that bothers me, because he is a leader and they look for him to get not only set people up, but also the score. He doesn't go to the bucket enough. And when they do go to the bucket, they turn the ball over. 22 turnovers the last game. Their sloppiness on turnovers is absolutely inexcusable. But that doesn't happen that much when TJ McCollum's in the game, because he's a little bit shiftier. He drives to the hoop, and maybe because the intensity of the defense isn't focused on him, possibly.
Did you hit a prop with him the other day?
I did. The one bad thing about McConnell, I mean, he's been in the league 8 years. He's well paid. He's a smaller player. By the way, his sister plays in the WNBA as well.
Oh.
Yeah. Very good player, excellent player. And but on the defensive side, because he is smaller, he is a deficiency. They can take advantage of him because of his size. He is not big, but he brings his own talents, and it is on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm looking for him to do very well in assists and points. So I would say TJ in points, assists, and rebounds I don't have the number in front of me, but I like that prop. So I got a few props there in the first half with Indiana getting as a dog. I'm also betting, and you already know, I told you 3 times. Yeah. I have 3 bets on Indiana plus the points, which I'm going to probably have to get off of because I got too much. But if the line keeps going up, I will have a little bit of a hedge on the other side, but not fully a hedge, just partial hedge. But that's it for today, Andy. Good show. We talk again next week. I think that's our next recording. And we're setting up some different things down the road. Andy's going to be doing some special, basically one-man show on the contest and what's going on in Las Vegas, who's on what teams are being played. And he does a great job with that. I'll be doing a Sunday night opening line with predictions of what the line might go to. Yeah. Not giving picks on that show necessarily, although it's possible. But I will be trying to say, well, this line opened 6, but I think it's going to go to 7, 7.5, or it's going to go down to 3. I'm trying to say where it might go.
The toughest line to predict a line movement is the opening line of 5.5 or 5.
That is very true.
5.5, because if 5.5 goes to 6, probably ends up going 6.5, 7. If 5.5 goes to 5, it probably goes down to 4.5 and then 4. At 4.5, you figure the line's most often with the sharps, it'll go down to 4, and they'll be waiting for it to go to 5 before they can get that extra half point back and go down to 4.5.
Excellent, Andy. Thank you for today. Good luck, everybody out there. We'll see you in a week.
Good luck, folks.
Take care. Bye-bye.